I had just finished teaching a class with the new men here at Allen Hall, the Seminary for the Diocese of Westminster, and I came into my office and there was a missed call on my phone and I didn't recognise the number, so I phoned it, and the nuncio answered the phone, and he said to me, "I'd like to see you, please come to Wimbledon tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. I put the phone down and I thought, well, this could be business, but I thought, my second thought was probably not, because he wouldn't be asking me to come in the evening the following day. So I was aware that there was talk of the need for appointment of bishops and so on, and inevitably you start thinking about it. And then thankfully the day was quite busy. It was the feast of the Martyrs of Dowie, who are the patrons of the seminary. And so I was able to kind of get on with work and keep busy that day. And in the evening we had a big celebration for the feast of the Dowie martyrs. And the first of those martyrs is St Cuthbert Main. And so we put his statue on the sanctuary for Mass. And at one point in the Mass I looked across at him and I thought, it couldn't be, could it? Because of course Cuthbert Main came from the Diocese of Plymouth and was ultimately put to death for the faith there in a small town called Launceston. But of course it was. So on the Wednesday I was still busy with the house here and went to our formation staff meeting, and by the lunchtime I was kind of in knots really about the prospect of what this could mean. And I decided that I needed the grace of the sacraments, so I went to the Cathedral and decided to go to confession, and thankfully there was a long queue, so I queued for 40 minutes in front of the Lady Chapel in Westminster Cathedral saying the Rosary, and that gave me great peace and a great sense of the Lord's presence, and there was a sense in which I was kind of handing everything over to him. I also went to the chapel where Cardinal Basil Hume is buried, because he first accepted me for the Westminster Diocese as a seminarian and ordained me deacon and priest. So I kind of bashed his ear a bit and said to him, you know, you've got to help me in this. And I suppose in the hour and a half at the cathedral, in the midst of my sense of being in knots, a great peace descended, and I was able to pray, which for me was very important. Whatever this means for my life, help me to say yes and to be open to it. So when I went to the nunciature that evening, I was still a little bit anxious about what it could mean, but anyway, then the nuncio came in and he said to me, the Holy Father's appointed you as the new Bishop of Plymouth. And my immediate reaction was, of course, to say yes, because that's my life. I've never sought any particular position or role within the church. I've always done what's asked of me, and I always felt that this was part of the promise that I make as a deacon.
Why do you think you were chosen for the role?
Well, I understand that there's quite an extensive consultation whenever a bishop is appointed, and the nuncio actually told me that there were a whole cross-section of people that were whose opinions were sought, and also when these new roles come up, that there is a profile presented of the diocese. And I was conscious that there's a need for a kind of newer energy and an outreach to particularly the young people. I'm delighted to see that there are two traditional universities, historically very good places of learning at Exeter and Plymouth, and a newer university emerging in Falmouth, and they have excellent university chaplaincies. So I think one of the things is my breadth of experience in working with young people in terms of making decisions in the seminary about their life, and perhaps also having a kind of new impetus for the new evangelization. Well, both my parents come from the Irish-speaking part of the west coast of Ireland in Connemara in Galway. It's very beautiful right on the coast. It's very similar, in fact, to parts of Cornwall and the southwest coast. My grandfather was a fisherman. He had a large boat and used to use it for trading from the mainland of Ireland in and out to the Aran Islands. Very similar experience historically happened on the Cornish coast, along the Cornish coast and out to the Scilly Isles. So I know those landscapes very well. They have always spoken to me of the majesty of God, and also of the goodness of people lived in local communities. There's always a tremendous sense of neighbourliness and openness to one another, even from people who are quite different. But one of the things I learned, particularly from my father, is that faith can be lived in a very real way, even if you cannot articulate it verbally. And he was also a man of deep integrity. In fact, when I told my parents that I wanted to become a priest, the one thing my father said to me was, always be honest, honest before others, but most especially be honest before God. And my mother too, my father passed away 7 years ago, but my mother has a very real kind of practical kind of faith, and I've learned from them the solidity and the importance of a deep faith, particularly in times of suffering or difficulty. Many of my friends in my Catholic secondary school had lapsed from the faith and felt that it had nothing to tell them. But I discovered at the age of 17 that in Lourdes there was lots of other young people who were interested in the questions of faith. And I also discovered that faith was lived in very practical terms, in terms of an outreach to those who are most marginalised in society. And there was a particular experience of the cross of Jesus within that, because it became clear to me that the image of Jesus on the cross presents us with a reality of God which is often hidden. And it struck me, if God is actually like this, Jesus on the cross, then he's worth giving your life for. And my vocation grew out of that. Well, first of all, my main task is going to be to get to know the priests of the diocese, because they're the ones who are the shepherds on the ground with the local communities, and to get to know those people. And therefore, out of that, I hope will grow our greater awareness of our confidence in having an encounter with Jesus Christ in faith, and have the confidence to step out from the church, from the cathedral, particularly to those who are most in need. I think there is a deep hunger for God in every human person. It's part of what we believe as Catholics, that every person is made in the image and likeness of God, and that therefore means that every person has the potential to know and love God. I think that's often unexpressed by others. It's expressed maybe as a hunger for joy or for peace or for harmony in their relationships with those that they love, or sometimes expressed in a desire for other things in life, whether that be for a better house or a better job. But I think all of these different hungers are ultimately hunger for God. And I think part of my hope is to be able to give the priests and the people of the Diocese of Plymouth a greater confidence to be able to reach out to those who do not know Jesus Christ, and how he can meet those hungers and can be a companion in the journey of life.